In a bright and colorful world called Xylar, where the trees shimmered with purple leaves and the sky sparkled with two suns, lived a small alien girl named Lyra. She was curious and adventurous, often wandering far from her village to explore the wonders of her home. Lyra loved the feeling of the soft grass under her feet and the sweet scent of the blooming flowers. Even though she was small, her heart was big, filled with dreams and hopes. One sunny morning, Lyra decided to venture deeper into the dark forest near her village. She had heard stories about the mysteries hidden within, but no one ever dared to go too far. As she walked, she marveled at the vibrant colors around her, the birds singing sweet melodies above her head. Suddenly, she heard strange voices nearby. Curious, she crept closer, hiding behind a large twisted tree. Peeking through the leaves, Lyra saw a group of mean aliens, much larger than her, gathered around a fire. They wore rough clothes and had angry looks on their faces. Lyra's heart raced as she listened to their conversation. They were planning to attack her village. "We will take their food and treasures. They will never see us coming," one of the raiders said with a cruel laugh. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. She knew she had to act fast. With her heart pounding, Lyra turned and dashed back toward the village, weaving through the trees. She was determined to warn everyone, but what could a small girl like her do against such dangerous creatures? As she ran, she remembered something her grandmother had told her. Bravery is not about size, it's about heart. Those words gave her strength. When she reached the village, Lyra found the villagers busy with their daily tasks. They were planting crops, tending to animals, and preparing for the upcoming festival. The sun shone brightly and laughter filled the air, but Lyra's heart was heavy with worry. She hurried to find the village elder, Eldon, who was known for his wisdom. "Eldon, you must listen to me!" Lyra called out, breathless from her run. Eldon looked down at her, puzzled. "What is it, young one?" he asked gently. "I saw raiders! They plan to attack our village," Lyra explained, her voice shaking. "We must prepare." The villagers paused and turned to listen. Some scoffed at her. "A little girl like her? She's just imagining things," one man said, shaking his head. "We have nothing to fear from raiders. They wouldn't dare come here." Another added, dismissing her warnings. Lyra felt a pang of disappointment. "Please! I heard them. They are coming to steal our food and treasures," she insisted, her voice rising with urgency. But the villagers continued to laugh and ignore her. They thought she was just a small girl with wild stories. Just then, a loud thud echoed through the village, and everyone froze. A shadow loomed over the entrance. Lyra turned to see Jake, a human diplomat from a distant planet, arriving for discussions with the village leaders. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a serious expression. Many aliens looked at him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Jake stepped forward, noticing the tension in the air. "What's going on?" he asked. Eldon explained how Lyra was warning them about the raiders. Jake turned to Lyra, his eyes searching hers. "Is it true?" he asked. "Yes! They're coming to attack! We need to prepare!" Lyra pleaded, her heart racing. Jake could see the fear in her eyes. He realized she was serious, despite her size. "Then we must act quickly," Jake said, his voice firm. "I believe you, Lyra. Show me where you saw them." Lyra's heart soared. For the first time, someone was listening to her. She nodded, grateful for Jake's belief in her. Together, they would face the danger and protect the village. With renewed determination, Lyra led Jake back into the forest, ready to fight for her home. As they moved deeper into the woods, Lyra felt a mix of fear and excitement. She was small, but she was not alone. With Jake by her side, she knew they had a chance to save her village. Lyra led Jake through the dense forest, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. The towering trees cast long shadows, and the air was thick with tension. She could hear the distant rustle of leaves as they moved, and every sound made her jump. But she knew she had to be brave. The fate of her village rested on their shoulders. "Are you sure you saw the raiders here?" Jake asked, glancing around. He was tall and strong, but even he seemed cautious in the dark forest. Lyra nodded, determined to prove she was right. "Yes!" They were gathered by the old rock formation. "We have to hurry!" she replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. As they reached the rock formation, Lyra felt a surge of fear. The place looked different now, as if the shadows were alive. She pointed to a spot behind a large boulder. They were hiding right there, she said, her finger trembling slightly. Jake moved closer, inspecting the area. Let's make a plan, he said, turning to Lyra. We need to prepare for their attack. If they come, we must be ready to defend your village. Lyra's eyes sparkled with hope. What should we do? She asked eagerly. First, we need to gather supplies. I have some gadgets that can help us, Jake explained, pulling out a small device from his pocket. It buzzed softly, glowing blue. This is a scanner. It will help us find out if the raiders are nearby. Lyra's eyes widened in awe. That's amazing! How does it work? She asked, leaning closer. Jake smiled, happy to share. It scans the area for movement. If the raiders come close, we will know. He activated the scanner and it beeped, casting a blue light across the ground. Now let's head back to the village and gather everyone. On their way back, Lyra felt a mix of emotions. She was excited to work with Jake, but worried about what lay ahead. What if the raiders attacked before they were ready? When they arrived in the village, the sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow across the fields. Lyra called out to the villagers, who were still busy preparing for the festival. Everyone! We need your help! The raiders are coming! Some villagers paused, still unsure about the warnings. But when they saw Jake standing next to Lyra, their expressions changed. Jake had a strong presence, and they could sense his determination. Listen, he said, raising his voice. Lyra saw the raiders. We need to work together to protect our home. Let's gather food, weapons, and anything we can use to defend ourselves. Slowly, the villagers nodded, their doubts fading. They trusted Lyra and Jake's bravery. People began to gather in groups, collecting supplies. Some went to find old weapons, while others gathered food and tools. Lyra felt a rush of energy as she saw everyone coming together. She joined a group gathering rope and nets, her small hands working quickly. We can use these to set traps, she suggested excitedly. The villagers nodded, inspired by her spirit. As night fell, Jake stood on a raised platform, addressing the villagers. We will not let the raiders take our home. With Lyra's knowledge and our strength, we can fight back. Let's make a plan! Everyone listened intently, feeling the weight of the moment. They discussed their strategy, dividing into teams for different tasks. Lyra felt proud to be part of this strong group, and she was no longer just a small girl. She was a key part of the team. While they worked, Jake took a moment to talk to Lyra. You've done a great job bringing everyone together, he said, smiling. I'm glad I met you. Lyra blushed but smiled back. Thank you, Jake. I couldn't have done it without you. You believe in me. Of course, your courage inspires others. Together we will make a great team, he replied confidently. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the village was filled with energy and determination. They worked tirelessly, preparing for the battle ahead. Lyra felt a sense of hope, knowing that even though she was small, she had a big part to play. With Jake by her side and the villagers united, they were ready to face the coming storm. Together, they would protect their home. The sun began to rise, casting a golden light over the village of Xylar. Lyra stood at the edge of the forest, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear. Today was the day the raiders were supposed to attack. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. She had spent the night helping the villagers prepare traps and defenses, but now it was time to put their plan into action. Jake, are you ready? Lyra asked, glancing up at the tall human beside her. Jake was checking his scanner, the blue light flickering as it picked up movements in the forest. He nodded, his expression serious but confident. I'm ready. We'll stay alert and stick to the plan. The villagers are counting on us, he replied, determination in his voice. They both knew the importance of this moment. As the villagers gathered, the tension in the air grew thick. Each person wore a mix of fear and determination on their face. Lyra looked around at the brave faces of her friends and neighbors, feeling a surge of pride. She was no longer just a small girl, she was part of something much bigger. The sound of rustling leaves reached them, and Jake quickly turned the scanner toward the sound. They're coming, he warned, his voice low but urgent. The villagers readied themselves, grabbing whatever they had prepared. Some held makeshift weapons, while others positioned themselves near the traps they had set. Lyra's heart pounded as she took her place next to Jake. What do we do first? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. First, we need to catch them off guard. We'll use the traps to slow them down. Once they're caught, we can fight back, Jake explained, his eyes scanning the tree line. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the trees, sending chills down Lyra's spine. The raiders had arrived. She could see their figures emerging from the shadows, their hulking forms towering over the villagers. Lyra felt fear grip her heart, but she remembered her grandmother's words about bravery. She took a deep breath and stood tall. The raiders charged forward, laughing and shouting, thinking they would easily take the village. But as they crossed into the trap zone, Lyra and the villagers sprang into action. "Now!" Jake shouted, and the villagers released the nets and ropes they had prepared. The traps sprang into action, tangling several raiders and causing them to stumble. Lyra felt a rush of adrenaline as she grabbed a small spear. She rushed forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "We can do this!" she shouted, rallying the villagers around her. The first raider, trapped and furious, struggled to free himself. Lyra aimed her spear and threw it with all her might. It struck true, hitting the raider in the leg. He howled in pain and fell, and Lyra felt a surge of confidence. "Great job, Lyra," Jake called out, joining her side. He swung a makeshift weapon he had crafted from a fallen branch, knocking down another raider with a swift movement. The villagers fought bravely, inspired by Lyra's courage. They worked together, dodging attacks and using their traps to keep the raiders off balance. The air was filled with sounds of battle, the clash of weapons, shouts of determination, and the occasional cry of pain. As the fight raged on, Lyra spotted a raider trying to flank them from the side. "Jake, over there!" she yelled, pointing. Without hesitation, Jake turned and charged, his powerful strides closing the distance quickly. Lyra joined him, and together they tackled the raider, surprising him. With teamwork, they managed to take him down. "We're doing it!" Lyra cheered, her spirits lifting. But just as they began to feel the tide turning, a larger raider emerged from the forest, towering over everyone. He roared angrily, his eyes locked on Lyra. "You think you can stop us, little girl?" he sneered, his voice deep and threatening. Lyra felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she stood her ground. "I won't let you hurt my home," she shouted back, surprising even herself with her bravery. The large raider charged at her, and for a moment time seemed to slow down. Lyra's heart raced, but she remembered the traps they had set. With quick thinking, she grabbed a rope and set it in place just as he approached. He tripped and fell, crashing to the ground with a loud thud. "Now!" Jake yelled, and they all surged forward, taking advantage of the raider's fall. The villagers fought with renewed strength, knowing they had a chance to win. As the battle continued, Lyra realized something important. They were not just fighting for themselves, but for their friends, their home, and each other. They were united, and together they would not back down. The battle had ended, but the echoes of the fight still lingered in the air. The sun hung high, casting bright light over the village of Xylar. Lyra stood among the villagers, her heart still racing from the excitement of the battle. They had won, but not without sacrifices. Several villagers were tending to the wounded, while others were clearing the area of fallen raiders. Jake walked over to Lyra, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "You did amazing out there," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I couldn't have asked for a better partner." Lyra smiled, but her gaze drifted to the horizon where the last of the raiders had fled. "We fought hard, but I still feel uneasy," she admitted. "What if they come back? What if they bring more warriors next time?" Jake nodded, understanding her worries. "That's why we need to prepare for the future. We need to build trust among the villagers and with each other," he replied, his tone serious. As they moved around the village, helping with the recovery, Lyra noticed the villagers whispering among themselves. She could see the fear in their eyes, but there was also a new sense of respect for Jake. They had seen him fight bravely, and many looked to him as a leader. "Let's gather everyone together," Jake suggested. "We need to talk about what comes next." Lyra agreed, and they quickly rallied the villagers. Soon, everyone gathered in the center of the village. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Lyra stood beside Jake, ready to share their plan. "Thank you all for standing strong today," Jake began, his voice steady. "We fought hard and we won, but we cannot let our guard down. The raiders may return and we need to be ready." The villagers listened intently, their eyes focused on Jake. He continued, "We need to train together. Each of us has something to contribute, and together we can protect our home." Lyra added, "I know we can do this. We've already proven how strong we are when we work together. Let's build a plan to prepare for whatever comes next." A few villagers spoke up, their voices shaky but determined. "What about weapons?" one asked. "Many of us don't know how to fight," Jake responded. We can train together. I'll teach you what I know, and you can teach me about your ways. We'll learn from each other," another villager chimed in. "And what about supplies? We'll need more food and resources to survive." Lyra nodded, excited by the suggestions. "We can gather more supplies from the forest and surrounding areas. There are many plants and fruits we can find. We'll work together to make sure everyone is safe." The villagers began to murmur among themselves, their fear slowly replaced by a sense of purpose. One by one they spoke up, sharing ideas and concerns. The energy shifted as they began to trust each other more. "Let's form groups," Jake suggested. "We can have teams for training, gathering supplies, and defending the village. Each person can take on a role that suits their strengths." Lyra watched as the villagers began to divide into groups, excitement filling the air. It felt good to see them come together. She moved among the villagers, offering encouragement and support. As they organized, Jake took Lyra aside. "You've done a great job leading this. I'm glad you're by my side," he said, his gaze sincere. Lyra felt a rush of warmth at his words. "I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me how to be brave," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. Days passed, and the village began to transform. Training sessions became a regular part of life. Villagers practiced with makeshift weapons, while others learned how to set traps and defend their homes. Jake led many of these sessions, sharing his knowledge of combat and strategy. Lyra discovered her own strength during this time. She trained alongside the villagers, showing them how to use the tools and traps they had prepared. She found joy in teaching others, and her confidence grew as they all worked together. One afternoon, while practicing archery with some of the villagers, Lyra noticed a change in their attitudes. They laughed and encouraged one another, their bonds growing stronger. It was as if the fear from the battle had been replaced by trust and friendship. "Great shot, Lyra!" one of the villagers cheered, and Lyra beamed with pride. As the sun set over Xylar, Lyra and Jake stood together, watching the villagers train. "We've come a long way," Jake said, his voice filled with hope. Lyra nodded, feeling a sense of belonging. "We're a team now. Together, we can face anything." With that thought, she knew they were ready to protect their home. The villagers had built trust, and that trust would carry them forward no matter what challenges lay ahead. The village of Xylar had transformed in the weeks since the battle. What once felt like a place of fear and uncertainty now buzzed with energy and hope. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting a warm light on the villagers as they worked together. Lyra stood on a small hill overlooking the village, a smile on her face. She watched as groups practiced their skills. Some were learning to fight, while others gathered food and set traps. The sounds of laughter and encouragement filled the air. It felt good to see her friends and neighbors thriving.
"Lyra!"
Jake called from below, waving at her. She turned and hurried down the hill, her heart racing with excitement. Jake had become a key part of their community, earning respect from everyone with his leadership and strength. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a group of villagers who were working on building stronger defenses around the village. They were reinforcing the walls with branches and stones, determined to protect their home from future threats. "They're doing a great job," Lyra replied, feeling proud of the progress they had made. "I can't believe how much we've accomplished together." Jake nodded, a look of satisfaction on his face. "It's all because of you and the trust you helped build. Everyone feels like they are part of something important now." Lyra blushed at his words. She had never imagined she could inspire so many people. "We did this together," she insisted. "Everyone has contributed in their own way." Just then, a young villager named Kira approached them, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Lyra, Jake! We just finished making new bows and arrows. Would you like to see?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. "Absolutely," Jake replied, his excitement matching Kira's. The three of them walked over to where the villagers were gathered, showcasing their newly crafted weapons. The bows were made from strong wood, and the arrows were straight and sharp. The villagers stood proudly beside their work, eager to demonstrate their skills. "Let's see how it works," Lyra said, stepping forward. She took a bow in her hands, feeling the weight of it. The villagers watched with anticipation as she knocked an arrow and aimed at a target they had set up. With a deep breath, she released the string, and the arrow flew true, hitting the target with a satisfying thud. "Great shot!" Kira cheered, clapping her hands. Lyra felt a rush of joy. "Thanks. We should all practice together more often," The atmosphere was filled with laughter and encouragement as they took turns shooting arrows, each person eager to improve. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the village, Lyra looked around and felt a sense of belonging wash over her. Later that evening, the villagers gathered around a large fire in the center of the village. They shared stories of bravery from the past weeks, celebrating their victories and the bonds they had forged. Jake stood up, raising his hands to quiet the crowd. "I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work and courage. We have become a strong community, and I know we can face anything together," he said, his voice filled with pride. The villagers cheered, their spirits lifted by his words. Lyra felt a warm glow inside her. They had come so far, and she was proud to be part of this incredible team. As the night wore on, Lyra and Jake shared their plans for the future. "We should explore beyond the forest," Jake suggested. "There could be more resources out there, and we need to know what lies beyond our village." Lyra nodded, her mind racing with ideas. "And we can make alliances with other villages. We could learn from them and share what we know." Jake's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "Yes! Imagine what we could achieve if we joined forces with others. Together, we could be even stronger." They spent the rest of the evening discussing their plans, their excitement growing with each idea. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Lyra took a moment to reflect. They had faced darkness together, but now they were stepping into the light. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. With Jake by her side and a community of brave villagers, Lyra felt ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had built trust, friendship, and hope. As she looked around at the faces of her friends, illuminated by the firelight, she knew they had a bright future ahead. They were no longer just a village, they were a family, united by their strength and determination. With a smile on her face and warmth in her heart, Lyra whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning.